Long-term or short-term capital gains tax, TDS or service tax, tax exemptions or penalties. If you have any tax-related query related to real estate, you've come to the right channel. Very, very warm welcome to Magicbricks Now. This is Property Hotline, the show that answers all your real estate queries. I'm Kavita Krishnan. With me today is our special guest, Suresh Surana. Suresh is the founder of RSM Astute Consulting. He joins me in our Lower Parel studio. Suresh, welcome to the show. Let's get started. We have a question that's come in on our website, www.mbnow.in. Now, Ravi writes in to say that he plans to buy property in Bengaluru. Now, the seller of the property has entered into a sale agreement with the landowner for the landowner's share of the property. Now, the seller has taken a loan and has paid 70 lakh rupees on the loan so far. He's not registered this property, however. So, Ravi wants to know if he should pay the landowner or the seller 1% TDS if he buys his property by entering into an assignment agreement with the seller by paying 90 lakh rupees. He adds that the seller himself is yet to pay TDS for that earlier transaction. Now, Ravi plans to register the property and pay the seller 90 lakh rupees. Is that the right approach? You know, Suresh, I have another question on this, which is also whether Ravi should be buying it in the first place outright from the seller when he's not registered the agreement, when he's not paid TDS. So clearly the title in that sense has not really moved from the original landowner to the seller's hand, right? What do you have to say?
Yeah, I think that's a very, very sort of valid question which you have asked. The first and foremost is that you want to make sure that you have a proper title to the property. And the fact that the existing seller, he has not registered the transfer in his name, and he has not even paid the TDS. So I think you have to first work out the legal modalities to make sure that you get a proper title to the property. So probably either there has to be a tripartite agreement with the plot owner on the one hand, and then the seller on the other hand, and you as the buyer, and whereby the conveyance of the property will be done directly from the plot owner to you. But for the seller, whatever rights he is having under the agreement, he will be assigning those rights to you. Therefore, that kind of consideration will go to him. And the TDS will then follow from the kind of legal agreement which you do. So if it's a tripartite agreement and consideration flowing to the plot owner as well as to the seller, then it will go in that ratio. And in case the seller is surrendering all the rights what he has got right now in favor of the plot owner, and for which the plot owner is compensating him, and you are then buying the plot from the plot owner, then your entire payment is going to the plot owner. So I think it is very important first to make sure that you have a proper legal documentation which will give you the title. And the TDS is 1%, so I think that is not a major thing. As long as it flows from the agreement, that should be really taking care of the entire thing.
Suresh, is there a third route over here where, Ravi actually requests the seller in this case to go ahead, pay the TDS to register that particular property, the sale agreement that he has entered into. And once that is done, then Ravi goes ahead and registers his own agreement and pays the TDS.
Yes, of course. Of course, that is a possibility. The only point which might come up there is, and there may be a stamp duty implication. First, when there is a transfer happening from the plot owner to the seller, and thereafter then the seller again transferring it, now to the purchaser.
So if they enter into a tripartite agreement, they essentially are paying stamp duty only once.
So yeah, exactly. So I think that's what. So probably I think you need to have a proper legal advisor to make sure that you do a proper documentation, and of course you minimize also the multiple taxes. At the same time, you don't compromise on your title.
Right. So Ravi, here's what you should do. You should ideally be going to a tax lawyer now with all these papers. Get a thorough legal check of the land title done. With all the transfers, etc. And also sit with him and figure out what is the best way to actually execute this agreement so that you don't end up paying an enormous amount in taxes, right? Moving on, we have Mr. Chadda, who's dialed in from New Delhi. How can we help you?
Good evening.
Good evening.
I have a question about the capital gain from property.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know the provisions for resident versus non-resident. For resident versus non-resident. And as a non-resident, how can I save the capital gain?
How can you claim capital gains exemption, you mean, right?
Yes, sir. By
Right.
investing overseas, is it possible?
Do non-resident Indians get exemption on capital gains?
Yeah. So Mr. Chadda, as far as the tax exemptions are concerned, which is like Section 54, if you reinvest in another house property, or if you are investing in bonds, 54 EC, 50 lakh rupees, those all exemptions are irrespective of the residential status. So whether you are a resident or non-resident, both the cases you are eligible to claim the capital gains exemption. The only major difference which would happen that in case the person who is actually selling the property, if he is a non-resident, then the tax which is required to be deducted as a purchaser is not 1% under section 194 IA, but actually the tax is the entire capital gains tax which would be applicable in such case. So for example, if there is a 20% long-term capital gains tax, then the entire tax needs to be deducted and paid to the government as against the rate of 1%. So that I think is an important differential. The other major point is that the non-residents are not entitled to claim the basic exemption for capital gains. So the basic exemption limit of 2.5 lakhs is not available to a non-resident for the capital gains in terms of calculations. So I think these are the two major differences. As far as exemptions are concerned, there is no, I think it is absolutely the same in both the cases.
No, also another thing that he wanted to know is what if he sells property here and he buys it abroad, then can he claim exemption?
No, in fact there was an amendment, specific amendment to section 54 which has now mentioned that in case the property is purchased outside India, then that exemption is not available. This was the situation a couple of years back, but after the amendment that is no longer possible.
Right, so exemptions on capital gains not really available for NRIs. If you are an NRI, you have to pay the complete tax that you are supposed to pay on capital gains that you make on selling property in India. Chandrasekhar has dialed in from Mumbai. Chandrasekhar, how can we help you? Mr. Chandrasekhar, can you hear me? Okay, I think there's a problem over there. Let's move on to a Facebook query now. Anand Chaturvedi writes in, says he owns a second apartment which is not yet let out. Now he wants to know if he's expected to pay tax on deemed income for rent, which he would have earned if he had let out the property. I think, Suresh, we've answered this question in practically every episode of Hotline, but please go ahead.
Sure. So, Anand, there is an exemption available only for one property as far as the self-occupied property exemption is concerned. The second property, whether you have let it out or not, there is a taxability based on the notional sort of rental value. Of course, you will be getting the standard deduction of 30%, whatever is the annual value of the property. And thereafter, in case you have borrowed the money for the purpose of buying the second property, you would be able to claim interest as a deduction. And that in that there is no limit of rupees 2 lakhs, which is applicable for the self-occupied property. So you can claim the entire interest as a deduction. You can also claim 30% standard deduction. But yes, irrespective of not having actual income, you will still have to pay the tax on that notional income.
Right. So from a tax point of view, it's actually very prudent to take a second home loan and buy a second property. That actually saves you a huge amount in taxes. However, that should not be the reason why you're buying a second home, why you're investing in property. It should be a well thought out investment decision. We've got Chandrasekhar's line back. Mr. Chandrasekhar, बताइए आपका क्या सवाल है?
हाँ सर, मैडम मेरे दो क्वेश्चन है कि कभी जो गवर्नमेंट बोल रही है कि अनडिक्लेयर्ड प्रॉपर्टी आपको डिक्लेयर करनी है।
हाँ जी।
हाँ, तो मैंने 10 साल पहले हाउसिंग लोन से मैंने एक प्रॉपर्टी ली थी और जिसका मैंने लोन क्लियर किया, तो शैल आई हैव टू डिक्लेयर दैट प्रॉपर्टी?
लोन आपका पूरा हो चुका है, डज ही नीड टू डिक्लेयर दैट पर्टिकुलर प्रॉपर्टी?
नो, एवरी टाइम व्हेन आई
नहीं, आपने अपने टैक्स रिटर्न्स में कभी दिखाया है ये प्रॉपर्टी?
हाँ दिखा है, उसका जो मैंने टैक्स एग्जम्पशन वो मैंने लिया था मैडम।
टैक्स एग्जम्पशन आपने लिया था, तो he is already declared it once. Why does he have to keep showing it again every year when he files a tax return? That's his question.
I'm confused whether I have to show or not.
Right. चंद्रशेखर सुराना जी को जवाब देने दीजिए।
जी, तो जहाँ तक इसका सवाल है मिस्टर चंद्रशेखर, अगर आपने ऑलरेडी प्रॉपर्टी पहले दिखा दी है तो आपको कोई ये इनकम डिक्लेरेशन स्कीम की अगर बात कर रहे हैं जो भी चालू है, उसमें आपको डिक्लेयर करने की जरूरत नहीं है। शायद आप एक दूसरा जो अभी एक स्पेसिफिक प्रोविजन है कि अगर आपकी 50 लाख से ज़्यादा इनकम है तो आपको एसेट्स और लाइबिलिटीज़ टैक्स रिटर्न में डिस्क्लोज करने की ज़रूरत है, जो पहले नहीं थी। तो अगर आपके इस तरह की कोई सिचुएशन है कि आपकी इनकम, अगर आप हाई नेटवर्थ इंडिविजुअल है और आपके अगर हाई इनकम ब्रैकेट में है, तो आपको एसेट्स इंक्लूडिंग आपका जो रेजिडेंशियल हाउस है वो उसमें डिस्क्लोज करने की ज़रूरत है। लेकिन उसका सोर्स आप ऑलरेडी एक्सप्लेन्ड है, आपने जब उसको परचेज किया, लोन रिपेमेंट किया, अगर वो ऑलरेडी एक्सप्लेन्ड है तो आपको कोई ये इनकम डिक्लेरेशन स्कीम में जाने की जरूरत नहीं है, लेकिन आपको प्रॉपर डिस्क्लोजर करना, जो भी टैक्स के रिटर्न में जो फॉर्म है उसमें जहाँ पे जो शेड्यूल आ रहा है उसमें आपको उसको डिक्लेयर करना जरूरी है।
सेकंड क्वेश्चन मेरा ये है कि
बताइए चंद्रशेखर जी, क्या सवाल है आपका?
मेरा सेकंड क्वेश्चन ये है कि मैंने अभी 8-9 साल पहले मैंने रिजाइन किया, वीआरएस लिया, और जो भी मेरा पैसा था, तो जो फंड्स था, ग्रेजुएटी, पीएफ, जो भी था वो मैंने सब मेरा मिसेस के नाम के ऊपर इन्वेस्ट किया। एक प्लॉट लिया और प्लॉट में कंस्ट्रक्शन किया। तो आफ्टर 5 years नाउ शी वांट टू सेल, तो वेदर आई विल गेट टैक्स एक्सेप्शन? माय वाइफ, शी इज हाउसवाइफ।
प्रॉपर्टी बीवी के नाम पर है क्या, वो उनको टैक्स भरना पड़ेगा उस पर, कैपिटल गेन्स भरना पड़ेगा उस पर?
जी, तो पहले
she is housewife only, because the money belongs to me only, my gratuity and my provident funds.
राइट। तो इसमें जहाँ तक चाहे वो हाउसवाइफ हो या नहीं हो, उससे कोई टैक्स स्टेटस में फ़र्क नहीं पड़ता है। इसमें ये कि आपने जो इन्वेस्टमेंट का अमाउंट है वो आपने अपनी वाइफ को गिफ्ट दिया है, तो इसमें सेक्शन 64 में क्लबिंग प्रोविजन है, उससे जो भी उनको इनकम या कैपिटल गेन अराइज होता है वो आपके इनकम में इंक्लूड होगा। तो और अगर वो उसको वापस री इन्वेस्ट करते हैं दूसरी प्रॉपर्टी में तो उसका एग्जेम्पशन भी आपको मिलेगा। तो लेकिन इसकी वजह से मतलब जो उनकी इनकम में इंक्लूड नहीं होगा, आपके इनकम में इंक्लूड होगा। और एग्जेम्पशन अगर आप क्लेम करते हैं तो आपको एग्जेम्पशन का बेनिफिट भी मिलेगा। अगर आप दूसरी हाउस प्रॉपर्टी लेते हैं उससे, तो आपको सेक्शन 54 का एग्जेम्पशन, आप उसका आप बेनिफिट ले सकते हैं।
Right, and in fact, like Suresh was just pointing out, if I'm not mistaken, recently there was a tax appellate tribunal ruling also which said that in case of jointly owned property, the person who is the investor in the property, that is the person who's paid the money upfront for the property, that person will actually gain from any tax deductions, or that is a person who has to pay taxes in case of any capital gains that you would get after selling that particular property. So that is something that you need to keep in mind. It could be jointly owned property, but if you have paid money for that property, you have to pay the taxes for that property, right? Moving on, we have Vandana who's called in from Pune. Vandana, how can we help you?
Yes, good evening, Kavita and Mr. Surana.
Good evening.
On one of your earlier shows, you had mentioned that if we sell a plot, the whole amount needs to be invested in another property. So, can this other property be a commercial property?
Okay, can you sell a plot and invest in commercial property to save on capital gains?
Yeah, so Kavita, as far as you have two questions. First question is, if you sell the plot, then whether you need to invest the entire sale consideration or only the capital gain amount. You have to invest the entire sale consideration, or in case you are investing lesser amount, then it will be pro rata deduction will be allowed. That is under section 54F. The second thing is, you need to invest in residential property. Investment in commercial property is not eligible for tax exemption. You can always invest if you don't want to claim the tax benefit, but if you want to claim the tax exemption, then you have to invest in residential property only.
Okay, so here's the thing. What you're essentially saying is, if I were to sell a home and buy a home, then I only need to reinvest the profit that I make.
That's right.
But if I'm selling land and buying home, then I have to reinvest the entire sale proceeds. So if I'm getting 10 lakh rupees for selling that plot of land, I have to reinvest 10 lakh in a home. It has to be a home.
You have to invest the entire sale consideration, or if you are investing lesser amount, then you will get proportionate deduction based in the ratio of the sale consideration to actual investment.
So Vandana, the answer is you cannot reinvest in commercial property and claim capital gains exemption. If you reinvest in commercial property, then you have to pay that capital gains tax. Also, Suresh, just one follow-up question. If I have commercial property which I am selling and I want to reinvest it in a home, do I have to invest the entire sale amount, like you said in case of land, or is it just the profit?
No, even in that case, because you will be governed by section 54F, which is the same thing, that you are selling anything which is other than a residential house. So whether it is plot of land or a commercial property, it is not a residential house. And when you purchase a residential house, you will have to invest the entire sale consideration.
Okay, so that's a very important thing that all our viewers can actually note down. A key takeaway, in fact, that you can only claim capital gains exemption on capital gains if you reinvest the gains in a home, that is in residential property, if you are selling land or commercial property, then you have to reinvest the entire gains, which is if you're getting 10 lakh rupees as sale proceeds, the entire 10 lakh rupees needs to be invested in a home. However, if it is a home that you're selling, if it is residential property that you're selling, and say you have made like a 10 lakh rupee profit over there, then you need to only reinvest the profits that you've made and not the entire sale proceeds. So that's something that you can keep in mind if you are in the market to sell property and buy another one. Email query next. R.L. Kapoor says that he booked a flat in 2009 in the NCR region. Now he received possession in 2015, registered it in the same year. If he were to sell the flat now, from when will indexation begin? 2009 or 2015? That's another favorite question that keeps coming up, Suresh.
Yeah, so Mr. Kapoor, since you have actually purchased the property in 2009, in the sense that you have entered into the agreement in 2009, even though you have received the possession now, the rights which are arising in respect of the agreement, they are more than now 3 years, which is therefore it makes it a long-term asset and benefit of indexation is available. There is a separate issue whether you will get exemption under section 54 for reinvestment in the house property, because there the condition which is mentioned in the section is that you should be owning the house property for 3 years in order to qualify as a long-term capital gain. But the indexation benefit is available to all the long-term assets. So whether it is shares, whether it is even a right in an immovable property or the property itself. So benefit of indexation definitely will be available to you.
No, Suresh, so I think his question is going to be capital gains. Will I be eligible for short-term or long-term capital gains?
So capital gain will be definitely long-term capital gain, because these rights in the property are more than 3 years. Even though the property itself is not 3 years old, but the rights, even the right to purchase the property is a capital asset. And that is more than 3 years. And therefore it is a long-term capital gain. The benefit of indexation is available, which means there is a lower rate of tax of 20%. Now there is a separate point whether the reinvestment in another residential house, you get exemption under section 54 or not. So that is a separate question where there is some controversy whether the benefit is available or not, because the house itself is not held for more than 3 years. The house itself came into picture only in 2015.
So right now, what are people doing? What is your recommendation? Say he were to reinvest the gains in another house, then can he claim exemption?
So that is where I would say that unless you have a compelling reason, I mean, because you might end up with a litigation on this front, because you are not holding this house property for more than 3 years. So you might have to end up paying a 20% tax in terms of long-term capital gains tax. After indexation, you will get the benefit of indexation, you will get the benefit of lower tax rate. But whether you will get exemption from reinvestment or not is a highly sort of controversial matter right now.
So you're better off not claiming exemption is what you're saying?
Or you claim exemption with a clear understanding that this might be under, kind of some sort of litigation may be involved there.
In future, you might have to actually turn around and explain why you've claimed exemption. So here's the thing, if you have bought under construction property, like in this particular case, then you start calculating capital gains or indexation as such from the date that you sign the sale agreement. Okay, it doesn't matter when you got possession, you might have just got possession last month, but if you had bought this property say in 2010 or 2012 or 2009 as in this case, then your capital gains, in that sense, the meter starts ticking from that particular date onwards when you sign that agreement. However, the jury is still out on whether or not you can claim exemption. So you qualify for long-term capital gains, but even if you reinvest it in a home, you may not be able to claim exemptions. That's something that you need to keep in mind, right? Facebook query next. Amit Bhargav says that he bought a property in DLF Sky Court that costs over 50 lakh rupees. He has paid the 1% TDS apart from the construction linked payment to DLF. Now he wants to know if he can claim 1% TDS back from DLF. Suresh?
Yeah, so I think Amit, first of all, you have deducted correctly, 1%, which is required now under section 194 IA of the Income Tax Act. Second thing is that this deduction is on behalf of the seller, and he will be getting tax credit for it, you are definitely entitled to deduct this from your, out of your purchase consideration. So definitely you can deduct it. There is absolutely no question on that.
Right, so that's clear over there. You can deduct that 1% TDS that you've already paid. Website query now. Murli says that he has sold a property. He wants to know by when he should reinvest the capital gains in another residential property. He asks if this time period is calculated from the date of sale. He also wants to know if this timeline must be followed strictly and if it's okay to breach it by a month or two. I don't think the tax department will be okay with you doing things like that. Suresh, what do you have to say?
Yeah, so Mr. Murli, first of all, from the date of sale, you have 2 years time to purchase a new property or 3 years time to construct a new property. So first of all, whether it is a purchase or construction, you need to decide that, and then you have 2 years or 3 years. Even if you purchase the property 1 year before the date of sale, even that is also eligible for exemption. So this is the time period. There is no provision in the law whereby there is any sort of power with the tax authority to give you extension. So these timelines have to be strictly followed. If you do not follow the timelines, you will not be eligible for the exemption. Then there is one more issue which you need to keep in mind. In case you have not made the investment by the due date of your filing the return, then you need to deposit this amount in a special capital gains account scheme. And from there you have to make investment, because the tax authorities are not able to otherwise monitor at the time of filing the return if you claim that I am going to invest, and afterwards if you don't actually invest. So you need to deposit this money in a special capital gains accounts, which is under the scheme, and invest from there. So that is very important.
So Suresh, hang on here. If say the 3-year period is over, I have not reinvested the gains, I have not been able to do it, or I am about to sign an agreement. You are saying oppose the 3 years also, I can hold this money in the capital gains account and invest from that particular account.
No. What I am saying is that basically, let's say for example, you have sold the property in this financial year, which is 16-17. You have to file your return by 31st July 2017. So the period of, let's say, 2 years is not yet over, and the period of even 3 years for construction is not over.
Right.
And if you at the time of filing the return claim that I am actually going to invest it later, which is still within the time which is permissible, then the tax authorities have no way of knowing subsequently whether you actually invested or not. So at that time you need to deposit this money in a special capital gains account scheme, and from there you need to make investment. So the time limit still remains at 2 years or 3 years. That doesn't get extended. But within that time, if the due date of return which has come earlier, you need to make sure that you deposit the amount there. So that is where I think many times people miss out on that. Only there is a small relief available if you have made the payment to a developer, for example, and the construction or the purchase was supposed to have been completed within the stipulated time of 2 or 3 years, but there is a delay on the part of the developer. Some courts have taken a view that a lenient view can be taken in such cases, but not if you have failed to invest at all altogether.
So this is essentially in cases where possession of the property is delayed.
Yeah, so let's say for example, you have already paid to the developer and he was supposed to give you the possession within 2 years. But he has not given. Now the question is, you have done whatever you could have done, and there is a genuine hardship being caused. So their courts have taken a little lenient view that in case it is beyond the control of the person and it is due to default on part of somebody else, as long as investment was made in time, then the benefit should be available.
Right, so that's the only place where you get an exemption, and that too because of the courts. Otherwise, Murli, there is really no extension. You have to, what you need to keep in mind is, if it's ready property that you're buying, you have to reinvest within 2 years. If it's under construction, you have to reinvest within a 3-year period. In the interim, you can hold that money in a capital gains account. We have Bal who's called in with a question now. How can we help you?
Hello, madam. Good evening.
Good evening.
Ma'am, I have a flat in Mumbai, as well as I've got a house in Mohali.
Okay.
Now the house in Mohali.
Okay, we seem to have lost Bal's line over there. We'll try and get him back. In the meanwhile, let's take an email query. Kiran Kumar Jathar says he bought an under construction flat at Shilfata. Now, till December 2015, the builder was charging 14.5% on 25% of the demand raised as service tax. However, in August 2016, the builder has calculated service tax at 15% on 30% of the demand raised. So Kiran Kumar wants to know if this calculation is correct, and if not, how can he get the builder to reduce the service tax rate?
Yeah, so Mr. Kiran Kumar, first of all, the rate of service tax has been increased from 14.5% to 15% with effect from 1st June 2016. So that is already correctly charged. The second thing is that earlier the service tax was payable on 25% of the total value of the property. But now if the property is more than 2000 square feet or more than rupees 1 crore, either of the two, then the service tax is payable on 30% of the property value. So I think what the developer has done is actually the correct calculation. Whether it is to be borne by you or to be borne by the developer, that depends on your agreement with the developer. In most cases, the developer would have written that all the indirect taxes like VAT or service tax would be paid by the by the purchaser, in which case he would have correctly charged you this amount.
Right, and that essentially was the last question on the show today. We've not been able to get back that earlier caller. However, let me give you what we've learned from the show today. It's, considering that a lot of people who've called in today are in the process of selling property and buying another one. Capital gains is top of mind. So here's what we've learned. Exemption on capital gains is available only if you reinvest the gains in residential property. That is, if you buy a home. So there is no exemption available if you were to buy a shop or an office or land. You need to reinvest the full proceeds. If you are selling a plot of land, or if you are selling say an office property or a shop, you have to reinvest the full amount from the sale in a home, which means if you're selling it for 10 lakhs, you have to reinvest the entire 10 lakh rupees in a home. However, if you're selling a home and buying a home, and you've got 5 lakh rupees as profit from the sale, then you need to reinvest only the profit in buying that home, right? That's how you can claim exemption on your capital gains that you have earned by selling that particular property. That's it on today's episode of Property Hotline. Suresh Surana, thank you very much for coming in, answering all those questions. And if you have any queries in real estate, do get in touch with us. We'll get the country's top experts to answer each and every one of them. IDs flashing on your screens. Thank you very much for tuning in.
You can watch live TV on our website mpnow.in. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Magicbricks Now. And don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at Magicbricks Now. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/Magicbricks Now.